up on stuff like that and do a bit of research. Speaking of research, I saw a story on Twitter last night that genuinely prompted me to think someone was about to get sued. And I mean a journalist, not a politician, because I thought this can't be right. This cannot have gone as badly for the Secretary of State for Science, Michelle Donelan, as the report that I'm looking at suggests, culminating in a claim that having essentially libelled a prominent academic at Heriot-Watt University, the Secretary of State for Science, Michelle Donelan, had agreed to pay a form of damages, which we are going to foot. As in, it will come out of the public purse. It will come out of the government budget. It will be paid by the proverbial taxpayers of tabloid law. And I can't think back to a story that sort of I found so affronting until I get right back to MP's expenses. I don't know why this one got under my wire, because we report every day on egregious behaviour in Parliament and outside by politicians, usually from this party. But there was something about this one that just felt like the planets of awfulness aligning in real time, live as it was for me last night on Twitter. Poppy Wood is the journalist upon whom I relied for my information and who seems to have done most of the heavy lifting on this story. She's the politics reporter for the I newspaper, which I often tell you is now my go-to newspaper of choice in the morning. And she joins us now. Did I get any of that wrong, Poppy?
No, that sounds about right. Yeah, it's an extraordinary tale. This goes back to October when Michelle Donelan, the Science Secretary, decided to intervene. She wrote to an open letter, which she published on her Twitter, to the head of UK Research and Innovation, which is the national research funding body, calling for swift action against two academics that she claimed had shared extremist views on social media. At the time, she didn't really disclose the full details of her concerns, but she claimed that the academics had basically retweeted posts on Twitter in support of Hamas, and this was shortly after, the outbreak of the Israel-Hamas war. UKRI then said that they were taking the matter very seriously. 3 days later, it suspended the two academics. I was then contacted by an academic who was extremely concerned about this turn of events and had shared with me an open letter signed by 2,500 other academics saying that, this looked like a sort of an attack on academic freedom, purporting to be in the name of free speech and upholding academic freedom. Then the next day, on the 2nd of November, we reported another kind of fascinating story that Michelle Donelan herself had ordered her advisors to draw up documents detailing some of these academics' social media posts.
Right.
And we saw an 11-page dossier detailing tweets from, years back of one of the academics' social media posts that it said, it was split into 3 chapters: anti-racism, transgender advocacy, and militant leftism. And the details for each were pretty flimsy. Included in the militant leftism post chapter was some retweets from 3 years ago in which one of the academics had said that she was in solidarity with her striking colleagues.
That was it.
And under transgender advocacy, it said, yes, Happy Transgender Day of Visibility. These are retweets of retweets.
And one of the original offending tweets simply described the overall situation between Israel and Gaza as disturbing. This is disturbing was one of the original tweets as well. So this is all, relatively innocuous stuff.
Totally. And that was, given the seal of approval yesterday when UKRI, after a long independent investigation into the matters, basically cleared both academics of any wrongdoing, said that there were no grounds for them to be suspended, no evidence, as Michelle Donelan had claimed, that they had violated the rules of this research body or violated the Nolan principles of public life. And it led to Michelle Donelan issuing a retractment of her claims. Actually, in the statement, she didn't apologise.
No, she didn't.
But she said she took it all back.
Yes.
And it then emerged that the law firm that was representing these academics had resulted in a libel case against Michelle Donelan, and she was forced to pay damages and the legal fees. We then revealed last night that actually the government footed the bill for this, i.e. the taxpayer, not Michelle Donelan in any personal capacity. So it's a really extraordinary turn of events that, what started out as a serving minister purporting to uphold academic freedom actually ended in a libel suit that the government, the taxpayer, has paid on her behalf.
And the libel was committed on Twitter.
It was committed on Twitter. I think there are serious questions about, whether the ministerial code should be updated to include ministers' social media use, but also it went further than just, an off-the-cuff remark. She had written a letter, she'd sent it and to the head of UKRI, and then she shared it publicly. I mean, there were several stages to this, and it was definitely thought out.
It's almost as if she was pursuing another agenda as well as the pursuit of these academics, as trying to sort of cast herself in some sort of culture war champion. But I wouldn't expect you to speculate on that. You can tell me what role Policy Exchange, one of the so-called Tufton Street think tanks, played in this whole saga.
Yes, so the right-wing think tank Policy Exchange did play a role in this. I was struck when we first saw Michelle Donelan's letter accusing these two academics of sharing extremist views, that it rang very similar to a briefing note that was published by Policy Exchange earlier that day, calling out the same two academics for sharing radical views. When UKRI disclosed the results of their investigation yesterday, it emerged via the law firm that was representing the two academics that actually it appeared a lot of Michelle Donelan's concerns about this were directed by the Policy Exchange letter in itself. So it appears to be information, in some way being disclosed to a serving minister by a think tank that is, not related to the government officially.
Well, yes, and an opaquely funded think tank at that, once again appearing to influence government. Have we any idea how much money the taxpayer is in the hole for on this, Poppy?
This is the crucial thing. So the taxpayers footed the bill for this, and the government won't disclose the amount that the taxpayer has paid. The Department for Science and Technology is just refusing to say what it is. It said that the damages paid to one of the academics was a nominal sum, but it's understood that the legal fees may have spiral to something much higher, though we really have no idea at this stage because they're simply not budging.
And do give me an idea of how I notice you haven't named the academics involved. If that's a conscious decision on your part, I'm happy to stay with it, whatever your reasoning is. But give us an idea of how it's affected them, if you can.
So, I mean, understandably, it's quite an extraordinary intervention. A cabinet minister naming two academics publicly using her personal Twitter, but also, official letter-headed with the government stamp paper, and accusing them of sharing extremist views. So, as you said earlier, it's a professor at Heriot-Watt University and one at UCL. We decided not to name them because their names
draws
have been
attention
shared
to their
around
identity, doesn't it? Absolutely.
Exactly.
No, I'm happy to abide by that.
Yeah, they understandably, I assume want this to die down, but it's really, not going away as soon as those questions hang over the amount of money paid and whether Ms Michelle Donelan can really stay in post.
Well, there is the final question. You've preempted it slightly, which is I'm sure you've got better things to do than listen to this programme, but I am fond of observing that in normal times there are behaviours currently commonplace in the Conservative government that would have been potentially resignation issues. I think this is one of them, or indeed a sacking issue. Are any wheels moving in that direction? I think the Liberal Democrats have tabled some form of motion.
Yeah, so the Liberal Democrats have called for an urgent Cabinet Office inquiry into what happened here and, for the government to answer those really crucial questions of how much money was paid, who was aware of this, whether it was signed off, by senior officials within government. Labour have also said that Michelle Donelan faces serious questions over, her commitment to academic freedom. It's unfortunate timing. It's also fortunate timing that this happens on budget day. It's something that could have died down, but actually there has been a lot of attention on it, and I'm sure the political pressure will hopefully yield some answers on this because it really hasn't been subdued by talks of tax cuts, this isn't going away.
Indeed, it's not. And do keep us posted. Thank you very much indeed, Poppy Wood, political correspondent at the newspaper, who has been, as you just gathered, pursuing this story from the very beginning. And it is extraordinary. I mean, rarely do the sort of triple whammies of culture war conservatives, Tufton Street think tanks and right-wing media, that rarely do they actually align quite so perfectly as they have done on this. But if you're going to accuse somebody, I obviously get accused of supporting Hamas at times like this by people on social media, just as I get accused of being in the pocket of the Israeli government and being ordered to tailor my coverage of the carnage in Gaza by my Jewish paymasters. So I get both sides of it. But if you're a government minister, my God, you should think twice, thrice, and four times before going in on a accusation like that. It's almost as if some of the people masquerading as experts under the umbrella of Tufton Street think tankery are absolutely nothing of the sort. Indeed, were you to check any of their CVs or many of their CVs, you'd wonder how on earth people from that milieu ended up